Here's how we created this epoxy resin tray using flowers from my mom's funeral. I ordered a silicone resin tray mold that came with both silver and gold handles. I wanted the tray to be deep enough so the flowers could fit naturally without having to manipulate them too much. Once the mold arrived, I started laying out the flowers inside. This part took a while. I moved things around until I found a layout that felt right. I didn't want to rush this step. Next, we got the epoxy ready. Most epoxy kits come with two bottles, one resin and one hardener, and you have to use both. I cannot stress this enough. Follow the instructions exactly as they come in the box. This stuff isn't cheap and you definitely don't want to mess it up, especially when you don't have extra flowers for mistakes. Mixing the epoxy takes time. You'll need a timer, a bowl, and a non-metal spoon. There's a lot of stirring involved, so be patient. Once it was fully mixed, we poured it into a cup to make it easier to work with. Now, here's a pro tip. Take a picture of your flower layout, then remove the flowers from the mold. Pour a very thin layer of epoxy, and I mean just enough to barely coat the bottom. Let it sit until it gets slight tacky, then add the flowers back in. If you pour the epoxy with the flowers already in place, they'll move around and they'll float, which means constant adjusting. This method also helps prevent holes underneath the flowers where resin can't reach. I also recommend laying the flowers face down instead of face up. As the epoxy cures, bubbles can form. And if the flowers aren't pushed down enough or there isn't enough resin, you can end up with unfilled spots. Once the epoxy started to harden, we noticed bubbles forming, so we used a heat gun to release some of them. Then we let everything sit overnight. This was just my way of being able to honor my mom, keep her memory alive, and feel like I was holding on to a piece of her. I know grief comes in many forms, and this has just been part of my healing journey. So stay tuned for part 2 to see how it turned out after we buffed everything, drilled, and added the handles.